I appreciate you taking time and wanting to come on here because the minute I was sent your band, I was like, yes, I'm all about this. This is something I have not had before. And so I'm very, very thankful that you're taking the time.
Okay, well, thank you. And no problem, of course.
But yeah, so I we kind of always start every conversation with everybody onto the first memories of falling in love with music. Whether it was a time, there was a record, or just a moment you sat with music and you realized how special it was.
Oh, wow, that's a nice
Mhm.
question. Uh, there's so many, but actually it reminds me of an interview I did last week where I was kind of asked a similar question, um, and I realized I had to go back like really to my very early childhood, like at a time when I barely uh, can remember, like I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 years old or something.
Yeah.
And because my dad is a guitarist as well, and my mom loves music, and there were guitars around the house and music, uh, and I do kind of vaguely remember even back then that I really just loved music. And it wasn't until later that I realized that not everyone has that
Yeah.
response to music. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. And it is true. I think as I've gotten older and, in my mid 30s and understanding that how I feel about music and why I started this podcast, not everybody has that. Maybe they just love music because they listen to a song, which is great, but there's people that can really feel the music and what it provides. And I understanding too that it's such a special thing if you feel that or you feel those goosebumps when you hear something or
Yeah.
create something. It's so special.
Yeah, I love that. And again, like I didn't realize that not everyone has that.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting to also just talk about with people. For example, my sister, she's into visual arts and she
Hmm.
studied that. And she's not that much into music. She loved Bon Jovi back in the day,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. But more as just general entertainment, not that type of what you were just alluding to, the goosebump kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting to talk to people about that because to me, like, yeah, I just have a hard time understanding how that can be different, obviously, because I only live in my own experience. But
Hmm.
music just seems to me at least seems to be the most unfiltered art form because it just kind of enters your consciousness in such a it just enters. There's no interpretation phase or so. It's just
Hmm.
sound waves and it's directly there. um I don't know, like I find that really intriguing.
Yeah, and it's just like, again, it can bring you back to a time if you hear a certain note or something or a song, and it can always bring you back. I mean, there's songs. I remember my mom was another like Bon Jovi was huge. That was huge for her. And if I hear a specific song, I can think of, oh, when I maybe I don't remember the exact age, but I can remember hearing that in the sound, like the background, that kind of was the soundtrack to my childhood and all these moments that just a note can bring. And I think that's really, really special. And I think that's why, again, I connected to your music because there were so many moments in there, which I know we'll get into in a little bit, which I'm really excited to dig into. But something else we always talk about is where people are from and how that adds to their music. And I've
Mm.
had a lot of people from the States here. You're one of the few that I've had that are not. So if you could
Mhm.
all take us kind of to your homeland and the Netherlands and how does that really add to the music that you create and your creativity?
um yeah.
Hmm.
To me the Netherlands is kind of, it's obviously where I grew up, so it's neutral territory, but it
Yeah.
also feels very what's the word? Just transparent to me.
Mhm.
And maybe that would have been the case wherever I would have grown up because I'm not the type of person who kind of I don't know, can I say that? Like I think I'm just kind of that type of person who finds their own way no
Mhm.
matter where they are, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Sure.
Um and Holland, that the Netherlands, it is also I don't know, like it always felt like a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing country. Like I don't, I never saw too much identity here, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
especially musically speaking. Um, if you search for it, you can find some Dutch artists, but really I'm not not very interested and also not influenced by any Dutch music or
Mhm.
anything. And I always looked, to my favorite bands and artists growing up, but also as I grew older, have always been from other countries. So um, I don't know how I don't know like how the Netherlands factors into that. Well, maybe the fact that it is kind of neutral and kind of nothing of interest to be found here, for me at least, that always has made me kind of look to the outside more. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really interesting to bring up because here, if I go, I don't know, like 20, 30 minutes in a direction, I'm surrounded by different types of music. I can go into a place, a venue, and it's there, and it's almost like to get to speak with you on that and the difference and how different that is. Where for me, that's all I've known is I can go here or this part of the country and experience this type of music, or go here and experience that and be influenced by it, or just falling in love with that kind of music and then realizing that it's different in all areas of our world and how we view music and what we're around and access to it, right? Like
Yeah.
that was really interesting where I was like, you know what, this is a great opportunity to touch on that some of us don't understand that and can't understand that side of it. And yet you're still creating, despite all that. And that sort of, I guess, what some people may think is an obstacle in creativity, you're still creating this beautiful music from being where you're from without even maybe having, okay, I'm influenced by this or that. But um, so yeah, that's really, really interesting.
It's also kind of funny that, if I kind of try to take on the headspace of an American
Yeah,
here, it's like you also like you hear your music in your own language, right?
right.
And for us, like I know many of my friends and me included feel that if we hear music in our own language, it tends to sound really silly
Hmm.
and it's hard to take it seriously. And that's one of the reasons I've always been drawn to music that's not in my own language, but also the majority of the music that you can find in our own language is kind of related to more folky type
Hmm.
stuff, if that makes sense. It's kind of
Yeah.
our version of country music, if you will.
Okay.
But your version is much cooler, of your folk music. Not
Sure.
that I'm the biggest country fan, but there is some really cool bluegrass kind of stuff out there that I find really awesome. And there's a lot of very deep musicality to be found there. Whereas here, that I never found that to be the case. Dutch music is kind of just it's very stereotypical, um, but it is very bland and very yeah, just not a lot of depth to it, if you know what I mean. Um, yeah, that's always interesting. Like I I'm always interested, like uh, what that would be like for a person like you who grew up over there and
Yeah.
all the music around you is in pretty much in your own language, right?
Yes. Yeah, which is yeah, and it's something I guess we all probably don't think about. Like I'm like I'll have to go look at, whether it's streaming or whatever I listen to. Am I listening to anything that is not, I think it's always interesting. I think it might be Edith Piaf. I've listened to that music, but I believe that's in French. And for
Mm.
me, listening to music in another language for me, where um, my main language is English, but when I can listen to that, there's such a beauty to that as well. But I guess get not everybody goes to dig into that, which I believe they should because it's just music and it's beautiful. So Oh, yeah, that's really important to touch on. And something else our podcast is the intersection of music and mental health and how music processes emotions.
Hmm.
And I know for you, and doing a little bit of research, that music is your kind of form of self-expression, and it allows that for you. For you, do you feel that music is that outlet to process an emotion, whether it's a happy emotion, a sad emotion? It gives you that outlet where maybe something else wouldn't let you process those emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could ramble on about that for hours, but the short answer is basically just yes. And
Yeah.
I've also found over the years, like many times, I actually had a conversation with a friend, a fellow kind of songwriter friend about this recently. Is that uh, over the years I found out that sometimes I enter these states of I'm not a stranger to depression and these types
Hmm.
of emotions. Well, that's not really an emotion, of course, but
Hmm.
more of a mental health thing.
Yeah.
Um, and much more in my past. Fortunately, now that I have some uh, tools to know how to deal, how to manage them, and indeed, like having a healthy way to express that type of, to process the feelings um, is huge in that sense. And what I've often still find is that sometimes, I get busy with other types of things in life, as most people do. And then I forget a little bit to be creative and to have that outlet. And then I always kind of fall into the same thing. And I discover it in retrospect, like, oh, I'm not feeling too great. And
Hmm.
it is because I've kind of ignored that side of things. And then when I dive back into it, like even if it's just one or half a day, like writing some songs, like it just immediately feels a lot better. And yeah, I mean, also it makes a lot of sense, right? Because in in the past couple of years, I've also been diving much more into mindfulness and that whole thing, which is of course
Hmm.
kind of related to mental health.
Yeah.
And there they talk a lot about the importance of being with your emotions, of actually feeling them instead of just shutting them out like we all tend to do.
Hmm.
Um, and I think music, just growing up, learning how to play music, and having that to be having that as my outlet is kind of that is the mechanism by which I guess do that most effectively, process emotions, because I can also like of course do it very consciously, sit there with eyes closed and typical meditation
Hmm.
style. But no, even though I have a couple of years of a lot of experience now, that still feels much less efficient to me. Like maybe I'm just not very good at being with my emotions
Hmm.
naturally, so I need music for that.
Yes. Oh, I can relate to that too. There are so many moments when I'm younger or even in my present right now that I am one of those people that maybe I can't have a conversation about what I'm feeling, but I have a song, or I can go strum on my guitar. I'm trying to learn at the moment, but I can do something and have that moment to express it, or listen to something help me express it and process those things in a way that, just talking with a friend wouldn't really get out. Maybe I'm not comfortable, but for some reason music is comfortable. So I love that you shared that, because that's I think it's a very common thing, and a lot of people share that, and why music is it's so powerful, and it's so important to all of us. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, and I mean also you're kind of went into it a little bit about the mindfulness aspect, which is something I'm trying to process too, but obviously right here, right now is coming out very soon, and that's a big reason why you're here. And even that title alone, I know you've spoke on it, and I did a little bit of research too of like the tie of the Zen Buddhism and appreciating the now and being in the now. And I think a lot of us we forget that and we're focused on what's ahead or what's behind and not focusing on where we're at. For you, how do you kind of keep that in your own personal way of appreciating the moment right now?
Yeah, that
Mhm.
I little bit of a disclaimer, I guess, is that I always feel kind of, and maybe that has to do with my background as well, like partially being from the Netherlands, culturally, kind of a tendency we have is to kind of be very direct,
Mhm.
maybe, not
Sure.
all of us, but on average, and a little bit no nonsense, if you know what I mean. And
Hmm.
then also being raised very anti-religiously, just very atheistically.
Sure.
Um, so my entry into like into meditation and to spirituality has always been a little bit of a fine balance between, because in the meditation world and everything spiritual, there's also a lot of wishy-washy kind of woo-woo
Hmm.
for me,
Yes.
at
Hmm.
least.
Hmm.
And anyway, so why I bring that up is that I always notice that that it's really difficult to talk about this without starting to sound like that.
Hmm.
and and also, you just brought it up that and thank you for doing your research, by the
Hmm.
way. That's
Thank you.
nice. um yeah, it it was a big yeah, theme of the new album.
Mhm.
But also there, like, finding my way into writing lyrics about it was really quite tricky, because the first attempts of trying to find my way into it is that, you know, so many people and over so many generations, have spoken and written about this very beautifully. And so there's like a whole landscape of thousands of years of metaphor and of writing about these things. But at the same time, that's all done. And I obviously want to do it in my own words and, in my own style. So very difficult to find a way into that it still feels somewhat, authentic and unique. Um, Anyways, I forgot your question, but
No, no, well, I love that, but almost like how you, whether it's in the music for this album that you've created, or just in your own life, how do you kind of appreciate the now
ah,
and
yeah,
really stick with that? Because I think it's something I struggle with. It's
yeah,
tough at times.
it is. Yeah, and in a nutshell, that's the whole thing, right? Just
Yeah.
the constant coming back to it. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, there's so many. It's again one of those things I can talk about for hours. I'm
Oh,
just trying to think what is the quickest and shortest answer
sure.
for this type of context. But, well, one thing that might be interesting is that, in these last couple of years of really diving into this topic, I did, fool around with kind of different traditions and all that, and it seems that kind of the Zen thing is speaks to me, like, it resonates the most. And I think uh, that partially has to do with the fact that that tradition is quite no nonsense. It's very it it doesn't really, or it appreciates the ordinary very much,
Mhm.
and finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. And anyway, so one phrase that kept popping up was either in its entirety, but often actually split up, like, was right here and right now.
Mhm.
And obviously, put together, it's quite cliche. um, but what I noticed is that every time I heard that phrase, it just, like, that for me seems, in combination with the way that I practiced, I guess, that seems to just spark this moment of, like, oh, right, it's really right here, right now. It's
Mhm.
That's always what it's gonna be. It's the only thing that ever is real for you. The rest, everything else, that, and that's the irony of it, like 99% of the time, we're in our heads, we're not there. We're either in the future or in the past, and it
Hmm.
seems so real, but it's just thoughts that like spin around and kind of hijack our moment and our experience. It's just lost in thought almost all the time, and it's just fascinating. It's both, to me, it's both intellectually fascinating and also learning a little bit, you know, actually how to put it into practice and to feel like, oh yeah, right, it is now. Like I find both fascinating and very interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, again, that could be a whole nother podcast, that whole idea that we deal with right, being in the now and in the thoughts. And I think what we get stuck in. And again, I want to thank you very much for sending the record over because I've gotten to hear it before this conversation, which I was really excited to dive into it. And when I listen to a record, I'll listen to it whether it's outside of headphones, in the car to get what do I hear differently. And again, anyone listening, I recommend when this comes out, this record on October 24th, listen to it with headphones because I really was able to find different bits and pieces that just really flow together well, but are special and you need to hear them. And in order to hear them, you have to really sit with it. For you, that this record is going to be out very soon before we know it. I think what is today, the 21st. So almost like a month we have before it's out. For you, when approaching creating this record, was there anything different you wanted to take a different approach on to create it?
Um, yeah, very much in line with the mindfulness thing. Like
Hmm.
you know, kind of one of the another long story short is that over the years I've kind of experimented quite a bit, like sometimes consciously but also unconsciously with certain projects where before I would start, I would have a pretty well thought out vision of what it would have to be. All of these,
Hmm.
I wanted to be this and that, and influences from this, and I want to, explore this, and early on, that always seemed to me like the right approach because it felt like not doing that would be kind of half-assing it or something, and I
Hmm.
would maybe be afraid that it wouldn't be any good. But over the years, I started to kind of realize, kind of by accident, that whenever I would kind of let that all go and I would just sit there with the guitar and just let it happen, like to me at least, as and it's hard for me to be a judge of what I do, obviously, but to me, when I try to kind of listen to what I do and have some kind of objective experience, whether that's possible or not, um, I realize that I like the 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 latter much better if I don't do that whole kind of if I just let things flow, no intention, no pre thought kind of framework. And yeah, that also kind of, later on when I start to think about it, that does make sense to me also, because like if you think about it, the more you kind of predefine before you're starting a creative process, the less creative it is by
Hmm.
definition, right? Because you kind
Right.
of, yeah, whatever you're putting there is kind of in the place of what, kind of free creativity would have brought you. Um, so that's what I tried with this record, just no intention other than maybe be inspired by this mindfulness thing. And that's it. And just see what would happen.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes when you think too much about something, um, and you have those expectations, you kind of take away from that creativity and just what will just happen when you're in that headspace and creation. And I think I even find myself even doing this podcast, it's different. But if I put too much of, I want this conversation to go this way, or I
Mm,
want this, And if I do that too much and I just say, the first year it was a lot like that. Now I'm in my almost third year of this podcast. And now that I'm just like, okay, I'm going to just sit and listen and talk, and whatever happens, happens. That's where the magic is, at least for me on my end. And I would assume the same with kind of what you're talking about. You're able to do that. And I think if anybody's listening, take that advice because that is beautiful advice about anything
Mm,
creative to just trust yourself too in that process.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's exactly the same, even though it's a different medium or different whatever it is, but with a podcast and music. But yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. And I think a lot of, I know a lot of people around me in kind of the artistic musical space that, like me, are kind of have some type of a little bit of an imposter syndrome type thing,
Mhm.
and dealing with perfectionism. And I think it's that often kind of hijacks that you know that openness to creativity, because it's scary.
Mhm.
It's you don't know if anything good is going to come out. So it's I think you just said it, like, yeah, you kind of have to learn how to trust that and just go
Mhm.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm still learning that. I know I said that,
Me
but
too.
I'm trying. It's ongoing. And obviously, I know we talked a little bit earlier about like the idea that music can give you goosebumps or that feeling when creating this record. Did you have any moments where there was a song you guys were doing and creating that you got goosebumps yourself, or a moment where you're like, this is going to be really special. This is really special.
Probably,
Yeah.
but most of them was those moments, though, kind of fortunately, I guess, happen kind of in a flow state, right? Where you're
Hmm.
so absorbed that you kind of are, in a way, no longer there. I always
Sure.
find that interesting, by the way, as well, like how flow states are somewhat similar to meditative states, but also almost the complete opposite in the sense that you're not there at all anymore. But then again, well, anyways, that's kind of another conversation, I guess. But yeah, I do take that. What will you call it? That kind of inner compass of when you're creating music. I take that very seriously, because that's in a sense the only thing I take seriously. I don't care about um, for instance, I'm as someone who studied music as well, and also has quite a bit of knowledge on music theory and all that stuff. That is something I really try to not think about when I write music. I'm really What I really try to do is hone in on kind of much more of an intuitive, creative, open space. And what I found is that whenever I find accidents, like happy accidents, like that is like all the best moments of all the music I wait, I should rephrase that. All the moments I really like
Hmm.
from the music I've written over the years are they're all happy accidents. They're just
Yeah.
stumbling upon things that in the moment, I was open enough to recognize, like, whoa, that is cool. And
Yeah.
I didn't do that. Like, I just made a mistake. The only thing I did here was be present enough to realize, wow, that is really cool. And so that's everything to me, that, like, I can go into more details on a more like practical level, but for instance, once, I have many little tricks and strategies that I do when I actually write music, and they're all aimed at me tripping up, making
Mhm.
making some kind of, doing things that I don't know the result of. That's where I want to put myself, and then I can kind of hear, like, or hopefully I can stumble upon those happy accidents and put them into songs. um and yeah, I mean, to come back to your question,
Yeah.
sometimes, when I'm very lucky, I can find something that gives me some goosebumps. But then again, it's tricky in the sense that, a record takes a couple of years from beginning to end, especially because my position in the band is I'm doing quite a bit. Like, I'm doing the songwriting, the lyric writing, the mixing, and um, And the point I want to make there is that at a certain point, uh, I've heard it so much, whatever I do, that I become um, what's the word? Desensitized, I guess,
Sure.
to
Yeah,
it.
sure.
And that is always like I haven't found the right kind of way to deal with that exactly yet, because I want to be exposed as little as possible to the music when I write it. But there's no way around it, right? When you're working on it, you're gonna expose like on and on and on. Um, but anyways, like every now and then, like even though I've heard it maybe a couple of hundred times at that point, for example, Robin, the bass player, comes in and he plays bass, and all of a sudden he does something, and oftentimes also like kind of a happy accident type thing that clashes and matches in some way, and then I can kind of hear again, like, oh wait, yeah, this was really cool,
Hmm.
and even if I don't, I really try to trust these days that um, I kind of try to trust my own uh, earlier filters so that even if later on, because it will inevitably happen that after some period of time, I just become desensitized and I find everything boring that I wrote. I just try to not take that seriously because I know it is because I've heard it too much. And yeah, just try to not take that seriously. Those because if you do, that can obviously spiral into self-doubt, and then you start to rewrite everything, and
Right.
when then once you go down that route, like everything gets worse and worse. I found out, like, you just make things worse.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too, again, letting things be and happen. It all goes back to that of because yeah, if you even that goes back to what I do. If I'm tinkering too much to get this, I need this, I want it this way. It's like I've learned that myself of leave this. And again, maybe something I didn't intend or a certain sound that came through over the record, leave it. That keeps the conversation, that keeps that. And I think that's such a important way you touched on that for anyone listening that is a musician to kind of carry that with them and to understand that process. And I'm sure it's easier said than done for me, who's not a musician, to say that and not spending that many years or um, even months to get the perfect sound of a song. So I think that's really going to resonate with so many people. And I mean, for me, and even listening to this record, a song that really I was like, I need to repeat on this one. There's so many, but Untamed. There's a part at like 3 minutes and 55 seconds towards the end of the song where there's just that note that is hang on, and it reminds me of just how beautiful music can be, where I think about those singers that I loved, whether it was a Chris Cornell of Soundgarden and the way he would yell, and not even necessarily yell, but just sing and use his voice as such a beautiful instrument. I found that in that song where I was just like, this is so beautiful. It's taking me to this place. So you hear that in everything you're talking about in a reflection on this record, which I appreciate as the listener.
Oh, thank you very much. Like, uh, yeah, I mean, Chris Cornell is one of my absolute favorites as well. Like both in terms of uh, well, just all of the aspects of it. I was kind of late, by the way, to his solo work. I
Yeah,
of course I knew Soundgarden back in the day, but I kind
sure.
of didn't know his personal, his solo stuff. And I've only discovered it a couple of years ago, but it's so good. Like everything
Yes.
about it, the lyrics, the songwriting, production. And obviously his control of his voice is just
Yes.
phenomenal.
Oh, and that's what it reminded me of. And I know, for me, like hearing that specific part of Untamed, I was like, is this, our oceans or is this Chris Cornell in a way? And I know someone's going to say, whoa, because I know Chris Cornell is so important, but it gave me that same emotion of what I felt and feel when I listened to that mo in those moments and his solo work, like you touched on. I think so many people, they just know Soundgarden or even his work with Audio Slave, which is great, but um, just a special musician. But it brought me back to that immediately. I'm like, what is this? what is this vocal? What is this sounding like? So I heard a little bit of similarities to it. So that's pretty incredible that you're also a fan.
That's very interesting that you picked up on that because you know, kind of I don't know if because you obviously did some reading on uh, our oceans,
Yeah.
but I'm a relatively new singer, right?
Right.
Like I sing now for 10 years or so, which is
Yeah.
still it's still not that much. I found out, and it takes a lot of time to become a good singer.
Sure.
Um, but anyway, so I was just talking about Chris Cornell, right? How I found out about his solo stuff like
Yeah.
relatively recently. And when I did, like I began to just sing along with it a lot because I also like other, besides being a as a besides loving it as a listener, as a fan, I just also discovered that hey, if I sing along to this in the right way, then that also kind of, even though I have a very different sounding voice, I
Mhm.
don't have that kind of very nasal type thing that he did.
Right.
But if I try and I kind of and it feels good, then there's a lot to learn, basically. Yeah, and I've always taken this approach also with guitar. Like kind of mimic the greats, and then you will find, discover a lot of cool things about your own playing or your own voice. Um, and one thing that I really, really, really fell in love with Chris is that he he I think like me, he had kind of a heavy voice, not a
Hmm.
naturally high voice at all, kind of a
Right.
thick voice, but he learned how to sing with it very high. And when he does it, I also noticed this whenever I would look at footage from here, like video footage, I would see that uh, me, some years back when I was singing high, I tended to kind of overdo it, and I still have a tendency to do that. And my, my expression, my facial expressions are oftentimes then kind of that I scrunch my face. And I
Hmm.
noticed with Chris that he has that kind of thing, like, for interesting listeners or you later
Yeah.
on, like look at some footage of him singing high. You will see that he has this abandonment on his face, like kind of
Hmm.
like his eyebrows go into this kind of,
Yes.
yeah, letting go kind of thing. And so I practice that a lot, like singing high, which takes power and effort, but at the same time, letting go, kind of reckless, a feeling of recklessness or something, and,
Yeah.
and kind of nonchalance. And yeah, not saying I got anywhere close to to his level, but man, I appreciate that so much. And he's the only singer I know that does that or did that
Mhm.
on that level. It's just extraordinary to listen to.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Now this just makes me again later, me already a big fan, but wanting to go look at that footage and see again, because I get what you're saying. I can picture it, but now I'm like, oh, I want to go see it. And even to get back to your record too, we had Lost in Blue, Golden Rain were the two songs that people are able to hear before this record comes out. And there's videos that accompany them. For you putting these two songs out, do you feel like it really helps set the tone for the listener to get ready for the release of this record?
I don't really know, to be honest, because
Sure.
one thing that kind of a new strategy we're trying is that we're kind of putting out all the songs with music videos.
Hmm.
And because we're doing that with all the songs anyways, I figured, why try to figure out a whole new order of releasing them? Why not just do the order of the album?
Right.
So that's how we got to that
Hmm.
decision. And yeah, and I mean, obviously there was some thought put into the uh, to the sequencing of the album itself. So I hope that also translates into the order of releasing songs now.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be honest, this whole releasing music putting it out is kind of my least favorite thing, if I'm honest. Like it's I'm interested in the creative process in that phase of it. And now that we're here, like I kind of don't really care
Hmm.
about what people think of it,
Yeah.
and not in a uh, uninterested way, right? Like I of course love the idea of sharing it with as many people uh, as we can, because I love the idea of sharing, but not of getting praise for it, or getting criticism for it. Like that is just of
Sure.
no interest to me at all. Um, yeah, much to the how do you say that? Like my label is not too happy with that, because they love for me to engage
Right.
more and do that whole
Hmm.
thing, and I get it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's
It's
as an
hard.
artist, there's another side to it, you know?
Hmm. I think that's a very real thing you touched on. I think so many, when they come on here and they talk about, that they're very proud of their record, they love what they've created, but it's the whole social media aspect and that marketing that is now where you have to become. And again, it's great to interact with the people that are listening and have that connection, but it's hard when it's forced. And a lot of
Yeah,
people are like, maybe I'm not up for promoting this in this way. A lot of the labels feel the same way where they're like, no, but you have to. That's how it gets out there. But I think it's just one of those things that I think some of us don't realize that toll, even talking about mental health, that's a mental health toll right there. You're excited about your release, but then you're expected to now, even on the days maybe you're not into it, to do that. And I love that you said that where you don't, not that you don't care, but I'm that same way in something I create. I'm like, do I really love this? Do I think this is my best or what I love? Yes, that's all that matters. I don't,
yeah,
if someone wants to be on the keyboard warriors, saying something, but that has to be so tough. And even your record, how you end this record, I think is really special. Obviously, a bloom where there's the choir in there from the backers of the crowdfunding for this record. And I think it's such a beautiful moment to listen to that. And I love when people have people that are fans or are part of the band in some way, a listener, or crowdfunding, you get to be a part of something so special and you hear that in those voices. For you, obviously, when just talking about the structure of the record, was that something that now that it's done and it's ready to be out, that you find it is so special about this record that you were able to do and include those backers?
yeah. I mean, it's funny how that happened. It was,
Yeah.
it began as just quite honestly as much more, what we were talking about a moment ago, more of that marketing brain of kind of,
Hmm.
what can we do to, for our listeners. By the way, out of disrespect, I never use the word fans. I find that's such a
Hmm.
no one is fanatical about us. They're just listeners. Anyway,
Yes.
um, so what can we do for our listeners that they would find interesting? And one of the things was, well, maybe some kind of participation, and then okay, what kind of participation? Okay, well,
Yeah.
and then this choir thing. I remember Devin Townsend doing that some years ago, and I thought like, well, that could fit really well. There's a I had this spot on the record in mind because it's not too hard to sing, and that of course is good to do if you're going to invite a lot of people to sing who are maybe not professional singers. You better
Right.
ask them something that ask them to sing something that they can sing, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and so that's how it happened. And then actually I didn't think about it for a long time until it was the moment to to ask people to record. And then
Hmm.
when I got it back and just put all the voices together, I was just very much surprised by how cool it sounded. I was like, wow, that I didn't realize that was such a that it would turn out that well.
Hmm.
Yeah, that actually kind of sounded way better than I thought it would. So, and then I think at that point it also quickly made sense to also end the record uh, with that. Yeah, it just sounds so anthemic, you know.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. And I think some of my favorite artists that have done that where they've invited and a very similar thing, I think they probably chose something that we can all sing. And I've had some friends that have been involved in those things. And then when you hear it back, it just is so special. And that's the feeling I got of listening to that song, where I just think of if I was involved in that and I'm a listener and I get to then hear myself and my peers and other people that are listeners that feel the same way involved in this, just how special and what a note to end this record on. So again, as a lover of music, I was just like, this is so great. And for me, it's such a sounding record that I feel like we get a lot of maybe it's heavier music sometimes or poppier music gets the plays. But the minute I heard this record, I was just like, this needs to be on here so I can promote it and push it out because I'm very much into the progressive rock and just things of that nature that take me somewhere when I listen to it. And yes, this record has done that. So I appreciate everything you have said in here today. And I can't thank you enough for talking about this record and taking time to come on here.
Thank you. You're so incredibly well prepared.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you. I try. I'm like I take it because I understand that you or anyone else, you're taking time out of your day to come on here and the music is so important to me. So I always like to do that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, very cool. Very nice, nice little chat.